On this episode of RevTalks, we're joined by Alan Kopelman, founder and CEO of Nationwide Payment Systems and the host of the B2B Vault podcast. How you doing today, Alan?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on today, Mason.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much for being here. And can you give us a high-level overview of Nationwide Payment Systems and what you do?
So, Nationwide Payment Systems was started in 2001. So, we're 25 years into the payments business. And it's like I was telling somebody this morning, I said, when I first started in this business, people laugh at this. You would plug the credit card machine into a phone line. And that was a whole, you had to learn a bunch of stuff about telephone lines and how they worked. And there was call waiting and all kinds of stuff that you had to do to the machine so that when somebody swiped a card and somebody called the business, it wouldn't go offline. And
Holy
today,
smoke.
you don't even need a wire. And I would say majority of businesses today are using software versus using an actual credit card terminal, or they have software that interfaces with the equipment.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So
I mean, it sounds like since you've started, the technology over the years have has really evolved.
oh yeah, I mean we evolved. I mean you're young, so you probably never had a credit card without a chip. So 2015, the chip came out, and then all the equipment that was out in the market, everything had to be swapped out. Everything in 2015, complete clean house, and on the credit card side and the ATM side, and
There you
that was
go.
a huge change for the business. And today, software is a bigger driver than an up than the need for payment terminals. Although you need a payment terminal, software is a much is where we're at now.
Yeah, it makes sense. So before you ran restaurants for 11 years, before starting NPS in 2001. So how does a restaurant guy end up in payments?
Well, a little bit by accident, and I was looking for something to do, and one of my friends said, "Why don't you sell credit card processing?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't even know how. I had no idea how it would work." So I went and interviewed with a bunch of different companies. One company finally offered to train me, and I said, "Okay." So I worked for them for about a year, and I kind of, I owned a restaurant. I owned a consulting company. I worked for when I worked in the consulting end of the business and in the hotel business, the guys that I worked for taught me a lot about finance and spreadsheets. And believe it or not, there were spreadsheets around, but it was on giant green paper. Okay, from a machine that made this massive printer would print out these sheets of paper. Doesn't look, that's, basically what Excel is today, but in a much cleaner format. And, I learned a lot about, because as a chef, you're not just cooking and creating, you also have to keep the numbers. You have labor costs, food costs, then you're managing a budget of how much you can spend on equipment and replacing things and repairing in the kitchen. And, there's a lot to be done. And, in some of the jobs I was in, I was in charge of, upwards of 300 employees. So, you learn a lot about everything from a business standpoint. So
Wow.
coming into payment processing, I worked for somebody and I decided I'm going to start my own company because they were not really thinking about all this other technology. And even though it was 2001, restaurants were buying, computer systems and they needed to have credit card processing and you needed different things to make that work. And they were like, "Oh, we don't know what that is. We don't want to do that." And I was like, "You know what? I'm going to find out how this is done." And I did. And then I figured out how to start my own company.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, Alan, it seems like from when you started in the workforce, you took a lot of the experience from your previous positions, especially specifically in the finance sector, and almost translated that to your existing company in NPS and took all that experience and created your company the way that it is today. So, what were some of the key lessons over your previous workforce history that really allowed you to grow MPS nowadays?
Well, one thing that when you start a business, one of the scariest things that somebody has to do is, unless you're like, you're starting a restaurant, then you need a whole bunch of employees. But when you're starting a business like this and you're doing mostly sales, you kind of have to figure out like, okay, what is the, what is the, what are you going to do with this first employee? And you've got to, you got to figure it out. Like, okay, I need to reach this much revenue, and then I can afford to hire somebody. And then what are they going to do? And you have to. You also, I learned a lot about, people do when you have employees, people do what you inspect, not what you expect. So you have to really learn, and you also need to not be a micromanager. If you're a micromanager of employees, you're going to all you're going to be doing is micromanaging people all day, and you're never going to accomplish it. You have to give people direction. You have to give them instruction and a goal.
Yeah,
That's what
makes
you have
sense.
to do.
So I mean, it sounds like,
And then you have to inspect what they're doing.
yeah, for sure. So, I mean, it sounds like really having the courage to start in the first place, building a very good team behind you, and being, generally speaking, like a leader for the employees that actually work for you has contributed to a lot of your success.
Well, it's hiring is not fun. You wouldn't want to be, it's a difficult task, and you know, finding good employees, then you got to be able to keep your employees. So create a good work environment for them, keeping everybody happy. One thing is, I learned one thing you learn in the restaurant business is about customer service. Because in the restaurant business, unlike this business, if you make a mistake, you send out a steak and it's overcooked, you have minutes and seconds to fix that problem. So, you have to be really good at problem solving and fixing things on the fly. I mean, in hotels that I worked in, I mean, I'll never forget one day I was changing my clothes to leave, and all of a sudden the catering director runs in and she goes, "Oops." And I said, "Oops, what?" And she goes, "You got 100 people coming in for dinner in about 2 hours." And I was like, "What? Say what?" And now you got to figure out what are you going to feed 200 people. And even if we have the stuff she told them was on the menu, and how are you going to do that? So, you got to really pull things together when you have to. And in this business, you have to be creative too, and you have to be a student. I was never good in school, but I'm good at business. But in the payments business, you got to learn and adapt. And one important book somebody gave me was Who Moved the Cheese? And that's a really important book from the concept of it. I don't know if you've ever read that book. You read
Yeah,
that one?
I've heard about that before.
Oh, you
I've heard
heard
about it
about it?
before. Yeah, yeah.
So it's important because when you have to shift gears and change direction, you have to change your mindset sometimes, and you have to go, okay, what's going on? Like right now, we're dealing with what's going on online. With Google, how is SEO changing? Now we got AIO or AEO and GEO, and we got all these large language model products out there: Chat GPT, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, right? Plus other ones that I don't even know the names of. And, where are people searching? How are they searching? How are you going to show up as a business? How are you going to figure that out? So there's a lot going on, in our world today, from, in the world of digital marketing, digital commerce. And, the next thing coming up now is all this, agentic commerce. I think that's going to be a big thing coming up is, agentic commerce and what's going to happen with that. And then we're hearing yesterday was a huge announcement. It was a big press release today from Visa about how they're going to work with stable coins, how that's going to translate. I don't know. The federal government of the United States has to figure out the IRS situation on that and change the rules, because they have too many rules about cryptocurrency, and they're going to have to do something. Otherwise, that's just going to be a hot reporting mess.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you've been very adapted throughout the advancement of technology and as well as business in general. And you also say that most B2B companies are quietly losing margin to flat rate processing and don't know it. So break that down for someone who's never thought about it.
So B2B companies don't realize that in 2010, there's a guy, Senator Dick Durbin, not a fan of his, created this thing, the Durbin Amendment. The Durbin Amendment made for lower rates on debit cards. So when you're paying Stripe, Square, PayPal, QuickBooks, Shopify, et cetera, on these flat rate plans, they're getting a ton of margin on these debit cards. So it doesn't matter whether you're B2B or B2C. A lot of people still use debit cards because they might not have credit, right? Or small purchases are usually made on debit cards, and we see that. And when you're giving away the farm when you're on these flat rate plans. Now, it might not matter if you're only doing $5,000 or $10,000 a month. Well, start jumping up to 50, 100 grand, 200 grand, 500 grand, a million, 2 million a month. Now you could be spending tens of thousands of dollars or thousands of dollars, because we don't make money from the interchange, which is the cost. So everybody has the same cost, whether you're Toast or your Stripe, Square, or your Alan Kopelman at Nationwide Payment Systems. The cost is the same for everybody. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be taking advantage of that cost and getting lower interchange for your business. Plus, take advantage of any discounts you would get by using whatever SIC code that your business qualifies for, which also can give you lower interchange fees as well. So we all have a new gateway, the sign back here, NPS1, which has all the same features that Stripe has with it. RESTful API, webhooks that developers can access. And we even set any developers up that sign up with us. We set them up with a sandbox and a Slack channel. And that way, when they're developing, they have somebody they can work with. They don't just have to guess or go into some community and just ask a bunch of people how to do stuff. They can get the information right there from the developers. They can show them their code, say, oh, something's not working and all that. And they can do all their testing and everything in that environment. And plus we answer the phone. So that's like our new platform. And then we have an add-on on top of that, which gives you smart invoicing, and another which does a two-way sync to QuickBooks, plus a whole bunch of other things. And it's all of our software is white labeled. So when you send a link using our software, it has your business logo. You don't see the payment company. You don't see Stripe. You don't see someone sends me a link. I have to pay a bill. It always says Stripe there. With us, it's going to be we link your domain into the software. So it's your domain that's showing up everywhere. Your logo showing up. You never see the payment company. It's all completely
Yeah.
white label.
Yeah.
Another
Stripe,
thing,
Link, PayPal, all of them. Anytime you,
right?
you go to pay an invoice, you always see the payment service that actually does it.
Right. With us, it's all white label. The other thing I always tell B2B companies is don't be the bank for your customers. Many companies, they start, and one of the biggest problems they have two problems: sales and then collecting money. So people say, oh, we're making sales. And then they're looking in their accounts receivable and they got 40, 50, 100, 200 grand sitting there, and it's aging. And as it's aging, what's happening? You're ruining your cash flow. So sending somebody a link makes people are going to pay the bill faster. And then people don't need incentive. People are like, well, why would they want to put it on a credit card? Of course they want to put it on a card. Everybody wants their miles, their points, their cash back, whatever it is that they're getting out of that company, right? They want it. They don't care about they don't care that you, let's say you're going to charge them 2% and then give them ACH for free. They're going to pay anyway because they want that benefit of that, and you get the benefit of A, getting paid faster, and B, having better cash flow in your business, because every day you wait to get paid, it costs you money. And you're using your capital that you can't use. You're using your capital to support your business for payroll and all that. And then you can't buy more goods. You can't spend more money on ads because you're financing your customers. There's no reason to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely makes sense. So it sounds like your business has a huge process in actually educating your customers where they're actually losing out on money and where they may be getting banged with fees where they could actually be saving as well.
Oh yeah, we show people all the time. We have a calculator on our website. We have a B2B calculator, then we have a cash flow calculator, and it can show you how to, accelerating your cash, how much, and even with credit card fees, how much money you're actually saving because you're getting a hold of the cash a lot faster. Sending a payment link out
Yeah, for sure.
to a
So,
customer that
Alan,
has a
you
bill with
also
you,
just
and
rolled
you
out
set the expectations like,
reoccurring and
okay, you have to
subscription
pay this
features
bill,
and
you're going to get
NPS
paid
one.
in
So,
3 to 5
how does the tech side of your
business
business
days
actually work? Are you
versus
building that
getting paid
in-house, working with partners, or something else?
to do what now?
You just rolled out recurring and subscription features. So how does the tech side of your business actually work? Are you building that stuff in-house or working with partners, or is it something else?
So we have a partner that we work with that builds out the software, where we act as a advisor on an advisory capacity with a bunch of different companies, and then we help them with different things, and so that way we get white labels of software and things like that, to which is super important to be able to have a good, subscriptions is super popular. So many companies run subscriptions today. I would say that's the number one thing companies are looking at, is how to get, even an air conditioning company. Okay, how can I get people? I'm going to charge them whatever, $200 a year and go to your house twice a year. And instead of waiting and paying 100 each time, they could just have a yearly subscription, or have people break it out monthly so that people can pay whatever, $20 a month or something, and get the same benefit, you know, and then you're lowering your cost. You're keeping that customer, because not everybody wants to give you $200. They'll say, okay, well, I'll pay 20 a month. And then
Awesome.
I know, people are trying to come up with ways to do that. And having subscriptions, what if you're cleaning pools and you have to send the invoice out every single time and wait for people to pay? It's much better to just put them on a subscription so that you're getting your money every month.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, it kind of sounds like you're building out like a custom experience for your customers with your software. It's white labeled, it has their actual logo on it, and you have features where it allows them to actually collect money consistently with a subscription feature and be billed on the time that they actually provide the service.
Yeah, like I said, it's all about, our software and systems are about improving cash flow. So that's the key to staying in business. One thing you see when people go out of business, you see a company, they go bankrupt, and you start reading into the article or whatever, and you'll read, oh, the company owes all this money to this supplier, that supplier. And then you get to the point where, oh, yeah, and they're owed $3 million in accounts receivable because they didn't have a plan on how to collect money. So
Yeah,
you got to have
awesome.
a plan. People don't fail. People don't plan to fail. They fail to plan.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. So, Alan, what does the rest of 2026 look like for MPS?
Well, we're good. We're looking at different ways of how to bring in more business. And, we're looking at AI very carefully with a very sharp lens on it because, a lot of people don't know this, but, Claude and OpenAI, they lulled everybody in with their like agent thing. And then all of a sudden they said, oh, sorry, no more agent. You have to switch everything to the API. And now everybody's having to pay for tokens. And a lot of companies started to find out, hey, tokens are more expensive than employees. So tons of yeah, a lot of companies started to find that out. I mean, I know someone who built out a whole agent program, AI agents, and found out they were using 9 billion tokens. And when they figured out how much the cost would be from Claude, it was like $7,000 a day. And they were like, that's not sustainable for us. We were paying $200 a month, $200 a month. Now it's $7,000 a day.
Oh my gosh.
And that's starting to a lot of AI companies started saying to clients, okay, well, we're lowering our costs, but now you have to go put in your API from Claude or OpenAI, and then you pay your own bill for tokens. And then those companies find out how much the tokens cost, and they're like, okay, whoa, this is over, you know, because unless you know how to manage the tokens and you know what you're doing with it all, it's not it's not doable for most people in a
Awesome.
small to medium sized business. I mean, someone can't justify $500 a day.
Yeah, for sure. So, Alan, yeah, this has been great. So, where can people find you? What's your company website and your LinkedIn?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Alan Kopelman. You can find the website, nationwidepaymentsystems.com. I have book a strategy call. It's free. Well, I'll talk to you about your business. We either do business or not do business. Either way, I'll help you. And you can follow the podcast, B2B Vault, the Biz to Biz podcast on Apple, Spotify, or any other podcast platform and YouTube.